2021 West Haven Mayoral Candidate Debate in West Haven City, hosted by the Weaver Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 1. This is a recorded event that will be broadcasted live on Facebook and recorded for record and technology permitted. This will be available for those of you who are unable to attend this event. My name is Derrick Fisher. I'm the President of the Weaver Fraternal Order of Police. I represent officers and deputies in all the local agencies in Weaver and Morgan counties. Our lodge was named after the Weaver River that runs through both counties. Our mission is to serve members. We do this by providing relief, events, activities, and serving as a representative to administrations and city leaders. We also focus on building better relationships with the communities we serve through service projects, events, and community outreach. Mayors in our communities are the leaders that give the final direction in our public safety mission and how we complete those missions. They are the leaders who work with the City Council to determine how the city operates and grows. The Weaver FOP invited and attempted to accommodate all the candidates so they could participate. 2 of the 3 candidates accepted and worked with us in putting together this debate. The topic of our debate is public safety. All public safety team members, police, fire, and dispatch, and the public were invited to attend. Additionally, if it was deemed appropriate, the Weaver FOP may at a later time invite candidates back for another debate. Important dates. The 2021 municipal primary election will be held on Tuesday, August 10th. Ballots will be mailed to eligible voters starting on July 20th and arrive around July 27th. This election will primarily be conducted by mail. In-person voting will be held August 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 9th from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. and on election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Weaver Center located at 2380 Washington Boulevard. July 30th is the last day to register for the primaries. In-person voting, as I stated before, and election day for the final after the primaries will be October 12th. Questions were accepted via email before the debate. Questions for the debate were chosen based on given topic and community requests. Due to having limited amount of time, not all questions may be asked in the debate. However, all questions not asked will be sent to each candidate for response. Responses will be posted on our Facebook page. Our candidates today, current Mayor Mullis and candidate Pat Young. Councilman Rob Betterwood will not be joining us today. Introduction of the topic. Law enforcement is becoming more undesirable career field for multiple reasons. Retirement raising to 25 years on a retirement plan that is not competitive with surrounding states. Leniency has been placed on the offenders and stricter guidelines on enforcement and the officers serving their community. And for each agency, the lack of value placed on officers. The Weaver County Sheriff's Office has its history of producing top-grade deputies despite the current negative view of law enforcement. I'm introducing our moderator to my right, Jasmine Olson. She's a junior at Weaver State University, pursuing a Bachelor in Integrated Science and Public Relations, Civic Advocacy, and Political Science. She has competed in debate for 4 years and is one of the top 3 collegiate debaters in the region. Additionally, she is joined by Rebecca Brown from Weaver State as the team captain. The rules are as follows. Each candidate will be allotted a 2-minute introduction and closing. When questions asked, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If another candidate is addressed during the answer, that candidate has 1 minute to respond. At the moderator's discretion, additional follow-up may be asked.
Okay, so we're going to start off with some introductions. Sharon, I'm going to have you go first. It's going to be 2 minutes. And you can stand up or sit down, however you would like to.
Thank you. Oops. I thought you turned it on. Will do, yeah. I'm Mayor Sharon Bolos. Welcome to everyone. It was on. Okay. I'm Mayor Sharon Bolos. Welcome to everyone who's here in person. I appreciate you coming. I'm also very grateful for technology because I hope there are many members of our community who are viewing this online. It's very much appreciated that all of you are willing to come out and learn about your candidates. It means a lot to us as candidates, and it will mean a lot for you at the polls. So a little bit about me. I have been involved in local government now for almost 12 years. I learned public service from my grandfather, who served on the Ogden City Council and also in the state legislature for many years, and he was well respected in the community. I watched him serve his community and watched him do it with great pride and with great admiration for those he served and a lot of respect for people. And I knew that I wanted to make that part of my life at some point. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I've had to serve the residents of West Haven. I love West Haven. It's my husband's hometown, and when we moved here, I fell in love with it, and I knew that this is where I wanted to raise my family. I'm married to Gus Bellows. We have 6 children and 3 sons-in-law, 3 beautiful grandchildren who are so much fun. I enjoy serving the community. I've enjoyed serving the community long before I was the mayor. I've always been involved in my kids' schools. I've been involved in community projects and anything I can get my hands on, really. I love the public, I love people, and I love service. And so that's been part of my life, and that's how I've served as your mayor, and that's how I wish to continue to serve, to be very involved and very aware of those around me and what I can do to best to make their lives better. Thank you. Struggling.
I am Pat Young. I am kind of new to West Haven. However, I am not new to serving. I am a wife of 50-some odd years. I keep forgetting the number. But at any rate, Bob and I have 3 children. We've got 9 grandchildren. And we just have the best time living in Utah. We just fell in love here. And we ended up in West Haven after starting out in Pleasant View and coming into Harrisville. And we ended up over here when our son's basement became available, and we made it an apartment, and now we're living there. We plan on staying for a long time because we bought our cemetery plot over in the cemetery. So someone asked me how long I was going to stay, and I said, well, I have a cemetery plot. Yes, that counts. So I am passionate about being involved with things that are important to my family. One of those things has been that we are involved in what's going on around us. And I guess my first involvement in public service was when I got upset about a tree that was cut down in our neighborhood that was the neighborhood tree. We could climb up that tree, and the children, the dogs, everybody could climb that tree. And they cut it down to make room for something else. So I sent a letter, and the rest is history. West Haven has been beautiful. I love looking out my window at the grasses, the fields, and the horses, and the animals that are around me. I love my neighbors, and I am just thrilled to be here as part of this community. And I will get to talk about some more of my history as time goes on. And thank you for letting me participate.
Okay, perfect. Can everybody hear me from here? Okay, perfect. We'll keep the microphone over there then. So we're going to start off with Pat. First question. What would you do in the first 90 days if elected?
Okay, that's really good. I've been thinking about that a lot. The first thing I would do is make sure my constituents, not constituents, that you know that you're my neighbor. I am your neighbor. I live in the same neighborhood as you. The second thing is we're going to look at public safety. I have noticed some holes. It bothers me. It bothers me a lot. So I want to take some time. I want to figure out what's going on with the CERT program. I want to get that functioning again because CERT was important. I don't know how the police feel about that, but I'm hoping we can be hand in hand in that program with you, and I'm hoping that can work well. The other thing is I want to pay attention to start looking at this infrastructure issue that's going on around us. 4700 is getting a makeover. So I'm thinking there might be something else that needs to be looked at. That is a safety issue to me. And I am grateful to know a couple of other things. We've got this wonderful trail system that is really nice to have. The only problem is I don't know where I am necessarily when I'm on it. I think that needs to be looked at. And the other thing is, some of our neighbors are wanting to know what kind of services we're supposed to have. I want to make sure that everybody in our community knows that they have an opportunity to call the office, ask, find out, and come and talk to me if you have a question. Thank you.
Are you going to stand up every time, Pat?
What?
Are you going to stand up every time?
Is I'm going to have to do that?
I just asked her if she was going to stand up
Oh,
every time.
I don't have to.
Or can we sit down?
Let's sit down. I'm sorry. I thought I was supposed to.
Okay. If you promise, then I will sit down.
I promise. I'll
A lot
sit
more
down.
comfortable. The first 90 days in office. So I have been through the first 90 days in office several times since being first elected as the mayor. Every 2 years, we have an election that will sometimes bring in new council members. And so the first 90 days in office really for the mayor is a get to know you period to find out what that council wants to do. So I've seen the councils and their direction change over the course of the time that I've been the mayor, and not huge changes, some slight adjustments, some bigger adjustments, but I just think that first 90 days is so important to find out what direction the council wants to go. This time we'll have 2 new council members because 2 have chosen not to run for re-election. 2 out of 5 is a big deal, and even though it doesn't equal a quorum, which is what we dealt with 2 years ago, it's still a big change, and it's important to find out what they want. I've been successful in working with different councils and finding out exactly what direction they want to go. The role of the mayor is to help them to accomplish the goals that they have. So as I've seen different councils go in different directions, my job is to give them the information that they need to make the best decisions that they can to meet the goals that they have. Now my vision comes into play for sure in the city in that I give recommendations. Sometimes they'll ask me what I think. Sometimes I just volunteer what I think about a situation as I try to guide the community. But in the end, the voting members of the council are the city council members. And so the first 90 days is crucial to find out what direction they want to go. Do they want to make any changes? Do we as a city want to make any changes? And so that part of communication, I think, is the most important thing that we can do. And that involves all facets of the city government, of the services that we provide you.
Okay, great. Next, we're going to move on to what is more important, acting in response to the will of the people or acting in the way city officials believe is the best course of action? Sharon, you can start us off.
Okay, thank you. So, is it more important to act in response to the will of the people or the way that city officials believe is the best course of action? I think these have to go hand in hand. Certainly we listen to the constituents. The city council and I will listen to the constituents and find out what it is that you want. If because we have additional information or additional experiences, we think that maybe that is not quite what we think is best for the city, the job that we have to do then is to communicate what we think is best. That doesn't mean that we go and just ramrod what we think is best down the throats of the people, but a little bit of explanation. This is why we think maybe we should do something a little different. And the more communication you can get, the better off you are. I've had many, many conversations with residents who I've always asked, I don't expect you to agree with me, I just expect you to understand me. And there will be questions about the way the city is doing something. And really all it needs is an explanation. This is why we're doing it. This is why it happens. This is what we can do or we can't do. And as those conversations happen, people start to understand, okay, well I can see where you're coming from. I can see that you're doing the best job that you can for me. So absolutely the driver of these conversations is what the public wants. And again, if we as civic leaders think that there's something they're not understanding, and we would like them to understand that, our job is to communicate that. And not necessarily convince, I don't want to use the word convince. We just want them to have an understanding of where the decisions are coming from. And sometimes those things will line up and sometimes they won't. But As in the past, my door, you used to say your door is always open. Really, it's my email or my cell phone is always open, right? And I'm always happy to get citizen input on what's happening in West Haven.
Same question? My response to that is, I'm looking for a balance. I want to know not what a quarter of the residents know or think. I want to know what as many as we possibly can get think. Because these activities or these budget ideas, they boil right down to the community. Now, one of the things that I'm concerned about is getting this information to the people. There have been times when big things have happened, and if it hadn't been for the vision of one neighbor or two neighbors, we wouldn't have known about it, which is why I started going to all the meetings. I've missed a couple due to a surgery. I've had to make decisions too on whether to attend a meeting or not, but I'm in the audience. I get to watch how the respondents, the councils, and Planning Commission act when these things come out. And some of it is transparent, some of it is not. I want it open. It's like the Senate Office of the Budget. Wonderful to have these great ideas, and then the Senate Office of the Budget tells us what that will is going to cost. There's a line item there. And I am convinced that if people are smart enough, which they are, you're going to see that, oh my goodness, this costs X amount of dollars. And this is what we have, X amount of dollars. Oh, that really isn't going to work, is it? It's not I'm convincing them. This is where it is. I don't see any reason why our citizenry cannot see the items, what it costs, where it's going to go, and who's getting it. That's where I believe our information comes from. Am I talking too long? It's wrong.
No, you're good.
Are you going to use it with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody
Do you want to move the table up there or your chair?
Okay, so now we're going to be starting off with Pat again. And the question is, what is your greatest weakness and what is your greatest strength?
Just as a little fun item, I'll tell you, I used to teach people how to do employment, how to answer these questions. So I'm going to tell you what I told many, many candidates I was working with. My greatest weakness is chocolate. So, and my husband has brought these silly zingers back into the house. Oh, goodness, I just wish they weren't there. But actually, probably one of my weaknesses that has now turned into a huge strength is my shyness. Can you imagine that? I was shy. I really didn't like to get up in front of people, and now I'm comfortable, but I'm much better sitting down. So I have really overcome that over the years, and it has been just a wonderful experience to get to meet so many people. One of my strengths, I believe, aside from being able to shake your hand and look you in the face and smile at you, is the fact that I just think you are amazing people. I have gone around the community in the last few months, and actually I kind of started in January asking questions and talking to people. I have just absolutely really fallen in love with the neighbors that I've met. And they've been from one end of West Haven to another, so I don't feel like I'm a stranger to anybody. You may not know my name, but you'll learn it. Thank you.
Well, Pat, we have a couple of commonalities. I didn't know the answer was as easy as chocolate, but I'll go with chocolate as a weakness if I can do that. That is definitely a weakness, and I have not had any today, actually, now that I think about it. But I was also shy and overcame that through an experience in my life that was very difficult for me, but I came out of it a better person. The weakness I would say that I have right now is probably trying to do so much. I have a lot of things going on in my life, and I spend a lot of time focusing on things that are important, and as I do that, I find that so many things are important to me. So many things. Recently, most of you know that we got a city manager for the first time ever in West Haven. Up until that time, I was a part-time mayor working pretty much 40 hours a week and loved it. I loved it. Some of those responsibilities have been taken away from me, but I guess if I had to pick a weakness, it would be that I just want to excel and be good at everything, and I want to dedicate 100% to everything I do. It's passion, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. One of my strengths, probably my best strength as the mayor of West Haven, is the relationships that I've been able to build. And that strength that I brought to our community as your leader is based upon my ability to just build relationships, to make sure that people are number one, to make sure that everyone feels like they are important. And that goes a long way when you're trying to build relationships that will affect your whole community. Over the course of my time as the mayor, I've built important relationships in public safety, with other city leaders, with county leaders, all of our partners. I have a great deal of respect from all of those people because of the way they know I serve my city and my residents. They know that I love West Haven. They know that I love the residents. And I think that's my biggest strength that I bring to this.
Okay, Sharon, we'll start off with you. What are the biggest differences between you and the other two candidates?
I think this is a little bit of an unfair question because I think we have so much in common. All three of us are running for office because we love West Haven. I've never met a public elected official who ran for office because they hated the city they live in. It's painful sometimes when that accusation flies that you don't care about the city and you don't care about the residents. The job that we do is really hard. It's really hard. And to accuse a public official of not loving their community, I think is one of the most painful accusations that you can receive. So I think that we have that in common. I don't see that as a difference. I think we all love our city. The difference that stands out to me on a personal level and a professional level is my experience. Like I said in the last question, the relationships that I've built are something that I can continue to build. What the city needs from our partners and from our neighboring cities and our county, we're at an advantage. What we need from those partners is going to be a lot more accessible, a lot more quickly, with a mayor who has already developed those relationships.
Do you want me to start? Jasmine, do you want me to go? Okay. So what I see as our big differences, and I have to agree with Mayor Bolos, that I had to look hard because I can see that there is some obvious attention to the things that are important to us as individuals. But one of the things that is important to me is I found some holes, and I wasn't looking for them. I just happened to find them. One of them is with compassion among the individuals that are here. I have loved looking on the West Haven page and seeing the kindness of neighbors when they pick up somebody's dog on the street. Now maybe that sounds kind of Pollyanna, but to me it's just the way people are. That's what they do here. And when there was a family in need, there was a lot of help. But I've also seen some areas that are really deficient. And it would be sad to me that not some of the other people are paying attention to that. I would love when we see the neighbor whose yard is, whose grass is so tall, why don't you get out there and go help them or ask them if they're needing your help and that kind of thing. So I'm looking for some compassion in that. And I want to see it from the top, not just mayor, I'm not just everybody, all the way down. I see it in the police department, how kind they are to the children who are maybe doing something they shouldn't be doing. I'm okay with that. I want very much to have our neighborhood included into everything, and I've found some people that have felt like they've been kind of left out. So I asked them some more questions, and they said, you know, I just need to be, I just don't feel like I'm part of the community, and so I would ask them why, and these are their reasons, not mine. They want to be sure that they're heard, that they matter, and that's it. Sorry.
You'll go next.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, she's on it.
Oh.
Jasmine, sorry.
West Haven residents generally enjoy a high quality of life in a community that they describe as safe and quiet. The country setting is also a key characteristic that residents are interested in preserving over time. A slim majority believe the city is headed in the right direction to maintain this, but there are many residents with concerns. Pat, if elected, how would you address the concerns of the citizens and address the needs of the city?
Okay. Thank you for that question. I love it. Now, I want you to know something about that study. About 800 people, about 500 people were surveyed. There are 18,000 people in our city. We missed a few people. Now, I got the raw data. I read it. Yes, there are some people. 54% of those individuals that responded to the survey did, in fact, say that the city is headed in the right direction. Another 40, the rest of the percentage said they want things to slow down. So if elected, how would I address these concerns of the citizens? First of all, I want to know what everybody's thinking. So I'm hoping the city council is open again to community meetings. I'm hoping they're willing to sit down with people in smaller groups and find out what they're thinking. I have 1 minute left. I want you to know that when they put in the Income Tax Act in the United States, when that started, way back when it started, they had to get a hold of everybody. Well, we're smaller. I think we can do that. The other thing here, how would I address the concern if the city is growing too quickly? We're going to have to make some assessments, and we're going to have to make some hard decisions. Water is a big deal. Water is a very big deal. And I'm hearing, oh, well, we have enough, but no, we don't have enough. Why don't we find out and know how much we have? That goes across the board for everything.
Okay, that was an interesting survey, and depending on which section of it you look at, you can get a different read on the feel for how residents view their city. While 54% said that they felt the city was going in the right direction. When that was broken down for the city council, we realized very quickly that those who had been here 5 years or less had a much higher ranking for feeling that the city is going in the right direction. That speaks a lot to me. That tells me that the older residents, and by older I don't mean by age, but the more tenured residents have a sense of loss, I think. And my husband grew up in West Haven. It was Wilson back then, and he's watched all of this. He understands that. I think there's a sense of loss in our community, and they feel like they're losing a rural atmosphere. To address this concern, there are a lot of things that you can do. Some of them are in regards to policy. The ones that I would like to do are to help people understand why they love their community. When I talk to people about what they love about West Haven, there's a list of things. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things that may bother us or may trouble us, but in reality, if we didn't love where we're living, we wouldn't be living here. So I think we need to capitalize on those things that make people happy. To address the concern of the city growing quickly, those concerns are addressed through policy. There are ways to slow the growth. I think that our city council currently has put some things in place that will slow the growth without allowing as much density. I think some of those landowners, you'll see them hang on to their land a little longer until they can get more out of it. So there are some policy decisions that are being made that can help to slow the growth. And other than those policies, there's really nothing that a city can do to say, nope, you cannot develop your land. People have property rights, and we have to be aware of those. I think we answered two, but you didn't answer one.
You guys are totally
Okay.
fine. A majority of residents would like to receive some degree more communication from the city, and there are indicators that current communication channels can be more effectively utilized. Sharon, if elected, what would you change to connect more with your community? And then we'll move on.
Well, I'm really proud to say that communication has come a long way since I took office. We had a city Facebook page at the time that was completely inactive. I did a lot to bring that up to speed, to activate that, to put information there. We also revamped our website. There are what some people think are some issues with the website. When you're choosing a website, you don't get everything in one package. You get the best of what you've been able to experience. And so at the time we chose it, the staff had a large role in that. And they chose what they felt was the best package we could get for our budget. And it's far more high functioning than what we had when I first took office. So that's come a long way. I really, really have enjoyed my mayor's minutes. I know that several people follow us on Facebook. It's a way for me to get out into the community and say, what's happening this week? Just what's happening this week? And I love focusing on the staff. I love doing that. I love letting everyone know who's working for you and introducing you to those people. I would continue to do that. What I would do to change, I think there are a lot of communication efforts that can be made. As I've looked around in other cities, those that seem to communicate better have the money to do it. They have either a part-time position or a full-time position or sometimes a whole staff that help to do that communication. I would love to advocate for a part-time communication person who could just be the right-hand person for our city manager in getting all the information out. He and I work as a team to do that now, but we both are very busy and it's a difficult job. But I think that having a person dedicated to that would really go a long way. I think that pretty much covers it. I think I've really come a long way and I'm proud of the steps that we've taken in West Haven over the past several years.
I'm going to applaud that mayor's minute. I love it. I've seen it done in other cities around. West Haven, Connecticut does one because I keep getting on the West Haven, Connecticut page. I don't mean to go there, but that's where it takes me. So the mayor's minute would certainly continue if I were elected. And I did notice that another community, I think it was Roy, the mayor was in there. Somebody let him behind the counter and he was cooking. So it was a restaurant somewhere. He did say the name, but there weren't any people inside the restaurant. So I don't know if he was doing a good job or not. The thing that I like also is the fact that there's a newsletter. That's very helpful. I especially like the information that comes out with, sometimes there's a blurb in water bills. Now, the thing I would like to see improved is more of our council members, planning commissioners, one-on-one with our neighbors. That's what I would like to push for. And I don't know if they're going to push back because I know that the mayor's job is more administrative. The council is legislative. I get that. The mayor doesn't even vote. So I get that too. So I'm thinking I'm not going to have as much input as maybe some people think a mayor would have, but the people do. And if the people are involved, I think it would be very smart of the council members and such to be listening to those individuals. And that's what I would change is more one-on-one FaceTime if I can find people that are willing to do that. Thank you.
Now this is a community question from Kathy Murdoch about high-density housing. She believes this is a major issue and has brought in more people than the current infrastructure can handle, let alone water issues. There was not enough law enforcement to start with because they refused to pay for it. Will you be willing to stop any and all high-density housing units from being built in our city from this time forward? And we'll start with Sharon.
You caught me off guard. I thought it was Pat again. It's a great question from Kathy, and Kathy works for the Weber County Sheriff's Office. So her statement that there was not enough law enforcement to start with because they refused to pay for it is an interesting one to me. She works for the Sheriff's Office, and so if she sees that, then that would be a concern to me. I think what she's talking about with not being willing to pay for it is we've always had an option in our contract with the Sheriff's Office to purchase additional deputies that would be dedicated to our city, and the City Council has never taken that step. And perhaps Kathy sees or hears around the office things that indicate that we would need that. I really don't think that the current council is opposed to purchasing additional. The way that our contract is set up right now, however, is that on the ground floor, without purchasing any additional coverage, we split the cost of policing with all of the contract cities the sheriff's office contracts with. And we meet yearly to decide how we're going to do that. And our city manager is actually not a big fan of the way that that's happening. He made a proposal to the sheriff that would bring a better contract to the city and more control over how much we are actually purchasing. Did you ask the question? I don't remember you asking the question about the high density.
Will you be willing to stop any and all high-density housing units from being built in the city from this time forward?
Okay, I have 30 seconds for that. Would I be willing to stop any and all high-density housing units from being built in our city from this time forward? Yes, I would be willing, because if the council votes for that, then I, by law, have to sign that document. So they look at the general plan, and there were some changes made with the current city council when they came into office. Those 3 new people came in, and I signed those documents when those general plan adjustments are made. But would I personally, as the mayor doesn't have that authority to stop that, so.
Okay, I'm going to address the first part of this. High-density housing is a major issue. Brought more people. The infrastructure is a concern, and it should be. We have to provide roads. We have to provide fire. Wouldn't it be a terrible thing if there's a fire in one of these subdivisions and the fire department cannot get down the street because the street is too narrow? And that's happened in a couple of places. Not a good thing. Now, the other thing, this woman right here, Pat Young, used to be Pat Hall from Arlington, Virginia, whose father was an Arlington County policeman. Now, I waited for him to come home at night. I don't think I understood the ramifications then that I understand now. I don't think we can say that we have enough of anything when it comes to public safety. Are these positions needing to be allocated differently? That's for some people who are actually with their boots on the ground, on the front line, and I am not there. I do not have that information, but I can promise you, if elected as mayor, I will be there. I will know what's going on in the police department, the fire department, and our first responders. And as far as stopping high-density housing, what can I say? If there's a legal requirement that I have to sign the document that the city council does, they are going to be answering to the voters come when their term is up. And that will be transparent because somebody will know how they voted on this measure. And they will answer in a public way when it comes time for election. And I would too have to sign it if it were legally required.
So we'll start off with Pat this time. What have you done to support your first responders in your community?
I called them when I thought my husband was having a heart attack, and it was actually his blood sugar had gotten low. That's what I did. I was a wreck. And I've done some first aid training, but everything went right out the window when it was him. I just lost it. So I was so glad those men showed up at my door and came in and told me, Mrs. Young, he's going to be okay. Just tell me what's going on. They took me down right off the cliff. Now, when I said that my father is a policeman, his buddies used to stop me when I was 16 years old. They got my driver's license. They thought it was funny. I was terrified. So I have a deep respect for the police department. And I always have. And as far as I'm concerned, I can't do enough to help you. And I don't know if my dad was a member of the Fraternal Order of the Police, but you are my brothers and sisters. And I love you for the job you do and the way that you stand between us and somebody who doesn't want to do nice things or wants to hurt us, or germs, the way the first responders do. There isn't enough we can do for them. And so if I were the mayor, you would be getting as much money as we can possibly get. And if I know he's laughing in the back, I saw that. 30 seconds is all I have. But I know I don't make all those decisions, but I can talk a lot. And I can't see why other people wouldn't feel similarly if they were starting to feel, I want you trained. I want you going home at night to your families, just like my dad. And you can understand that and take that to the bank as far as the young household is concerned.
I've done a lot of things to support our first responders in our community, both as the mayor and as an individual. I've gone on ride-alongs with the sheriff's office. I have been a volunteer for their department. The one major thing that comes to mind when I think of a volunteer is I was approached by the sheriff last fall, and he was in the process of adding an additional chief deputy to his staff. That had been approved by the by the Weber County Commissioners, and he called me because he wanted an outside person, outside of his entity, a third party, to go through the hiring process. I was so grateful that he called me, because what that told me is he knew that I valued the sheriff's office. He knew that I would help him choose the best chief deputy that he could get. And I went through that entire hiring process for them and presented to the sheriff 3 candidates from whom he could choose to appoint as his new chief deputy. It was a fantastic experience, and I was happy to do that for them, and I learned a lot about that, and I'll talk about that in the next question. But I have taken every opportunity that I've been given to participate. We were invited not too long ago to go down to the dispatch and see how things are done down there. And what a great experience to watch those men and women who do that every day, and the stress that they're under, and to recognize their jobs and how important they are. Weber Fire District has invited me during my tenure 2 different times to go to what they call fire ops. And they take us out there and they show us how to fight a fire, and we wear the turnouts and we do rescue. And I've taken those opportunities because it brings me closer to the people who are serving you. And it gives me a better understanding of what job they are doing to serve you. To show my appreciation just on a personal note, for many years before I even became an elected official, my family and I have stopped by the fire department on Christmas Eve after we carol at the hospital where my husband works, and we've sung Christmas carols to them. Small ways to show appreciation.
Okay, Sharon, will you tell us a little bit more about your past experience with the law?
I'm really glad that this was a follow-up question. So back to the exercise that I did with the sheriff's office in the fall. Going through that process, I was able to partner with officers from different agencies in the area as they helped me through the interview process. And I learned a lot about policing and a lot about the sheriff's office during that exercise. I learned a lot of terms that I hadn't known before. I learned about the hierarchy in the sheriff's office. I learned about the respect. I learned what civilian versus sworn mean. I just learned so much. And it was up to me, because the project was mine, it was up to me to reach out to law enforcement agencies throughout the county and even into Davis County to get help with questions, to get help with interviews, to have them be on panels. And I just created such great relationships with those people and recognized their willingness to stand up for their profession. All of them were more than happy to help me, either come up with questions or sit there for a whole afternoon and spend time with the candidates asking questions to help me do the job that I was asked to do by the sheriff. The relationships that I've built over the time that I've been the mayor are invaluable to West Haven. I have respect from all of our first responders who are our partners. They know who I am. They know that I will go to bat for my community. They know that your safety is a top priority for me, and there is no question in their minds that I would not do anything for our residents and for their safety.
Well, I got my experience with, I guess it would have been my, not combat boots, it was my hiking boots. I had an opportunity to be in southern Utah for about 18 months where my husband and I were in a position to actually have to work with the fire hot shots. We had to work with, I had an opportunity to work with the local law enforcement. We had opportunities to, and I mean, we were hands-on doing the fire drills. We were actually involved in the rescues of several people. So I've got a first-hand knowledge of what these men and women, as far as our first responders, have done. And we had to have a heliport set up because we had a young man, a child who, his parents wanted him to have an experience in the outdoors, and his medical situation was so tenuous that he really could die. Everything was set up that not just my husband and I, but we were part of a group of probably 20 other couples where we participated in this activity. We're intimately involved in setting up the helicopter ports for this young man, just in case he needed to be gone. Set up the rotation schedule for people at the Welcome Center. We just had to do all of it. And this went on for a week. So I've got it. I've got your picture. I know it's hard and it's hot and it's awful, but when you go home at night, there are people who are so grateful for what you do. And I think there are people in this community that are extremely grateful. I'm hoping they'll be more expressive. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be going back to Pat.
Oh.
Have you ever had any negative experiences with law enforcement, and how did you handle them?
Does it count if I was the official and somebody got mad at me? Does that count? Is that a negative experience? It was negative. It was really, this guy was really mad. He said, well, I'm just going to take my motorcycle and leave. And we thought, okay, bye. That's how I handled it. Thank you.
Well, my negative experience with law enforcement would have to take me back to when I was a teenager, and I had a bit of a lead foot, and I had a habit of getting speeding tickets. But that's honestly all I can think of, and I don't think that had anything to do with disrespect. It's not even something I think I had to make a change. Something I grew out of as a teenager, but a run-in with law enforcement, I don't have any experience with that. I've never had anything but respect for police officers, whether it was because I was afraid of them as a speeding teenager, or whether it's because I have grown up to appreciate wholeheartedly what they do.
Okay, we'll go into a follow-up question for that. If there was a situation where you dealt with a police officer who you believe crossed boundaries, how would you deal with that? And either of you guys can take that question first, whoever wants.
I assume that you're talking about, as the mayor, if a police officer crossed boundaries. I think as with any personnel issue, there would be an internal investigation. It's a little different for me to speak to this because we contract our police services with Weaver County Sheriff's Office, but I would expect that they would follow the personnel policy as far as privacy goes. Every officer is entitled to a thorough investigation of any allegations, and I would support, at this point, the Sheriff's Office in their investigation and in their handling of the situation in compliance with their personnel policy. If we had our own police department, then I would support the chief 100% and expect her or him to follow our personnel policy in working through that situation.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what you have to do, period, is it has to be looked at from a departmental personnel issue. And the first thing I'm going to say is let's let cooler heads prevail, let's find out what happened, and let's get the information before anybody does anything. So I'm hoping that is what will happen. How would I respond to that? That's exactly how I would respond. I would get the information from everybody as much as we possibly could. I've looked at these things, watched the news reports from Salt Lake, etc., and other places that have had these issues, and you just got to get the information. You cannot just make decisions based on the cell phone angle, although everybody is taking pictures these days. So that's part of the, I would think, investigation. I recall my father saying one time that there was an investigation in the department, and he was talking about how people were involved in, and this has been a lot of years ago, okay? But it was still the same. You have to get the information. It has to be put together. There has to be a group of people that could be as open-minded, and I don't know what is done initially to an officer who's involved in something like this, but there are protocols. Follow them. That's what I would say. Follow them. And then let's go from there.
Okay, before we move on, I also just want to remind everyone that there will be a open question period at the end, so start thinking of questions to ask the candidates, if any topic. Going on to a similar situation, what would you do if an officer who represents West Haven gets into a shooting and the initial video is controversial? How would you respond? And we'll start off with Pat.
Again, we take the information. We gather it, we put it together, and we find out what actually happened. I'm not sure that happens in every case, but it should. Now, I don't know if it's appropriate to have somebody from the city involved in it. I'm thinking, just for transparency, that's the only thing I'm looking at, because the one thing I don't want to see happen anywhere is someone disrespected because they think they saw something that wasn't really there. I am very interested to see how these video things are being handled. You know, I don't have an answer, but I know what my niece said in Indiana about some things that happened that were very public, and she said, oh my goodness, they left this part out where the individual was really not in a situation that was so good, but it didn't come out to the public. And that bothers me. So if this is so important, why didn't it come out and become public notice instead of someone just taking a video that went onto Facebook and everybody in the world thinks, oh, this is what happened. They were there, I was there, but they left out a few parts that were very significant. I'm hoping we would get our information before we make any decisions or rush to judgment.
The initial word that came to my mind when asked how I would respond if an officer representing West Haven got into a shooting, and initially on the surface it is controversial, the word that comes to my mind is compassion. I think we did have an officer involved shooting. There wasn't really a controversy surrounding it, but when I got that call at 1 in the morning, my heart went out to the deputy and to the person who was shot. These situations are heart-wrenching enough without controversial video. Like Pat said, with everyone's cell phone recording all at once and different viewpoints of a situation, that's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing for law enforcement officials to sort out, and that's why those officers are on paid leave until everything is determined, because they need to be aside from the situation. So responding with compassion, I would plead with the community to have compassion while it was sorted out. Compassion seems to be migrating further and further away from our community in a lot of respects. But I would, as the PIO for the city, I would get onto social media, I would get onto the news and say, please have compassion while we work this out. The facts will come forward. We have to have faith in that. We have to have faith in our employees that they are trying to do the right thing. And please be compassionate while we get to the bottom of this and sort this out.
A large concern of public safety is the decisions made by elected officials when they do not understand how public safety operates. So in order to prevent these issues, would you be willing to attend a Citizens Police Academy? We'll start with you, Sharon.
This will not take 2 minutes. I would be thrilled to do that. It's actually been talked about a couple of times. I know it's a big thing for those agencies to put together, but as I said, I've participated with Weaver Fire District twice, and there's a lot of information. And elected officials are often invited to those things. And it doesn't have to be a whole day thing, a big deal. It can be a stop by the dispatch center and see how things work down there. Those are important. We take those opportunities whenever we can. If there's not a conflict in our schedule, we should be there. We should be there finding out what you all do to provide our public safety, and I would commit to do that as I have in the past.
You bet I'd go. I went to patrol camp, so that's got to be similar. And I think I was 12. Police Academy, I hope it's longer than a day. I hope you put us through each section, because you know what made a difference, I think, to high schoolers, and I was a substitute teacher for a while, when they learned that when the officer tells you to put your hands out of your pockets, you better take your hands out of the pockets, put them on top of your head, be ready to be compliant with what that officer is telling you, and know that that's what they tell everybody. So just do it. It's okay. I think that information is vital to our community, to our children, and the more people that know that information, the more it gets out, the more we learn, the better community we have. So I would love to be there. I'll register now.
Will you also commit to an ongoing engagement with your public servants to understand the work that they perform with you? Going back to Pat.
You better let me know what's going on. I don't like to miss out on anything, which is why I guess I'm running for mayor. But the other thing is, I'm going to be asking you questions. And you're going to give me answers. If I'm not comfortable with the answers, I'm going to keep asking the questions. So I will be there. I will be in your face. I will be beside you. I will be around you. You have my support in all of your honorable decisions. If things go awry, we're going to solve it. We're going to work on it. And I'm so glad that Sharon brought up the idea of compassion, because that's my mantra. We have got to be better to each other. And if we're not going to take care of our first responders, that includes everybody, our police, our fire, our ambulance people. If we're not going to take care of them, we're going to lose them. And I don't think we want that. So I want you trained, and I want you happy, and I want you to stay.
There are a couple of things that go into committing to the ongoing engagement. First, you have to have that relationship, which I've talked about already. I have a lot of great relationships within the sheriff's office and surrounding agencies, officers I worked with through the exercise that I did with the sheriff's office. But I think one of those things that helps build those relationships is the level of comfort that officers or deputies have with you. I feel like I'm very approachable. I feel like any deputy that I walked up to talk to, if they knew who I was, would feel comfortable having a conversation with me. We've invited the deputies who patrol in West Haven to come and have lunch at our city hall, to make it their office. We don't have a police station, right? So we want them to feel like that's their home. Whenever I see a load of vehicles at our city hall, I know it's time for me to stop in and say hi because they're there for lunch. You have to make yourself approachable so that they know that they can trust you with any concerns or any questions that they may have for you.
Most residents are satisfied with the current law enforcement services provided by the Weber County Sheriff's Office. In although one hypothetical scenario, residents would prefer to maintain the current law enforcement service arrangement with the Weber County Sheriff's Office over a local or regional option. Recreation and open space funding is relatively more popular use of potential property tax revenues than a local police department would be among fewer residents, while the reverse is true for residents who've lived in the city for 21 years or more. Larger agencies like the Weber County Sheriff's Office also have a lot of resources for the communities they serve. If West Haven City created their own, how would you provide the same resources available as larger agencies? We'll start on this chair.
Okay, the only way to provide more coverage or more services is to pay more money. And we are currently doing a law enforcement study that is being done by a third party, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. And that study will show us what that tipping point is. Where is it that having our own police department would be more cost effective than partnering with the sheriff's office? For me, public safety is almost out of the equation because no option is okay in my mind if it doesn't provide public safety. So that being said, our public is safe. We feel like we have an appropriate level of policing in our community. That question out of the way. As an accountant, my next question is it cost effective? There are cities that surround us who have chosen to have their own police department because they have their name on the car. There's something to that. There's a pride factor, there's a factor of ownership, I get that. But for me, if we're getting the appropriate amount of safety coverage that we need for our residents, then we need to do what's most cost effective. So getting more resources, if we were to have our own police department, we would have to purchase those resources that we now share within the sheriff's office. That takes budget money. That takes a commitment by the city council to say, yes, we are now at this point willing to spend a lot more money on policing than we have in the past because we want to have our own agency. So I would definitely not be in favor of switching and reducing the services that we get. That makes no sense. That makes no sense for the safety of our residents. So we would have to be willing to put that money toward that, toward our own police department if that's the way that we wish to go. But I agree with 77% of the residents who are satisfied with our police services. I think the Weber County Sheriff's Office does a great job and they have a lot of respect for them.
I don't know that I have a problem with the resources, of course. I saw those big trucks that came out during the parade. Is there anybody aside from the military that has stuff like that? I mean, that's amazing. Whoa, I was impressed. I don't see how any jurisdiction, save Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., some of those big, large areas that could come up with equipment like that. So I don't think we could compete in that arena. But when lacking information, because I didn't know what necessarily we do in West Haven, so I started asking around. I came from Harrisville. I went to Harrisville, and I spoke with some people there and asked them, I said, what is the advantage to having your police department? And basically it boiled down to response time. Now we're putting you guys in a really heavy burden by having you address the communities that you have to address. So in my opinion, something has to happen. We either have to get a community-based relationship with Weber County that takes the burden off of you, and when the big deals happen, children lost, people lost, fires, those big things that require the big equipment that nobody's going to have but you and the military, in my opinion, we're going to have some relationship. And I am certain there are cross-jurisdiction assistance. When somebody needs something, everybody's there. So I don't know, I'm sure there's a payment for that. I don't think anybody's offended at paying that. I think there are ways to find, if the people want to have better response time, we either get more Weber County Sheriff's guys or we pay more money.
So we'll start off with Pat. What are your plans as mayor to ensure your officers have the right resources, such as pay and benefits?
What are... Okay, the top one right here. Oh, next page, sorry, we flipped a page. Okay, as mayor, to ensure that the officers, now, I'm assuming we're going to stay Weber County. Is that how we're going to assume this? We're Weber County. Okay, we're going to be sure we're paying our share to make sure that you guys and gals are trained. Nobody goes out of here without the right proper training, and I knew that. I learned that from my father, who was the marksman, and he was for the entire state of Virginia, metropolitan area, and then apparently it's genetic. Two of my nieces were sharpshooters for the Marine Corps and actually trainers. Now I have a niece who is a police officer in Indiana. I learned a lot. She is quite a, you don't want to get these girls mad. So I want you people trained. As much training as we can possibly come up with, because I know that's a key. We don't want you having to rely on your instincts when there are good practices available for you to learn, to apply in your career. Now the thing that worries us, I think, is that we're going to get you all trained and you're going to leave. Well, that is kind of how things go. I get that. But, and I don't know how you're going to address that. That is a personal thing. So I don't know if we're going to ask you what you have to do in your Weber County when they start training you, and then you decide you're going to leave. I don't know how they handle that. It would be interesting to find out. So I want you trained. That's bottom line, how I would keep you safe. I want you trained, and I want your equipment state of the art as much as we can afford. And if we can't, we're going to find out where to get the money from, because it is life altering.
Okay, to ensure that our officers have the right resources, currently we're under a contract with the Weber County Sheriff's Office. When they invite us to their, they call them huddles that they have once a week, where they just give a brief update. And it's interesting to listen in on those and to understand the needs in their office. As the Sheriff's Office has come to us, and it's happened over the last several years, every year they come to the contract cities and say, your price is going up, your price is going up. This last year we took a bigger hit than ever before, percentage-wise. Our price continues to go up, and we ask the hard questions. The mayors do. We ask the hard questions when we meet the sheriff, and we say, why are the costs going up? What is it? Additional state mandated training is one of the big things. They don't have a say in that. They can't say, hey, state of Utah, we are not participating in that training. That's not an option. There are mandates from the state. They want to make sure they have the best equipment. They want to make sure that they have the staffing that's necessary to keep you safe. If we kick against the pricks and say, we don't want that, we don't want that, we're telling our public that your safety is not important to us. We have to support the professionals in the law enforcement profession. We have to trust the professionals. Any elected official who pretends to know that profession without having served in it has no business doing so. We have to trust what they tell us. If we were to get our own department, the most important thing for me would be officer safety. We have to make sure that we are not trying to cut costs to make our own department affordable. We're not buying used equipment. We're not trying to cut corners wherever we can. That's not the way you build a department. You build a department by letting your officers know that you will put your money where your mouth is for their safety.
Thank you. So there's a nationwide shortage of law enforcement. In your opinion, why is that? And what are you going to do to combat that within your city?
It's anybody's guess as to why that's happening, but I remember when I was a kid and you feared and respected law enforcement without a doubt. I think the majority of people did. And now we're at a point where that fear and respect have gone away, and it's unfortunate. For whatever reason, I think the way to combat that is to make sure that your culture is top-notch. I've had a lot of conversations with the Sheriff's Office. There was a time when the Weber County Sheriff's Office was losing deputies to larger agencies for 50 cents an hour more. That's a problem. There are now instances where the Weber County Sheriff's Office is recruiting deputies from larger agencies for less money. It's about the culture. You have to provide a place where your officers feel safe, where they feel supported, where they know that you will back them, where they know that their safety and their jobs are the most important thing to you. And the reason that's important, not only for the culture, is because when you treat your employees with that much respect, that's how they serve your public. When your employees know that they are top on your list of priority, they turn around and they serve your residents the way that you would serve your residents.
Well, that would have to be something we would agree on, because that's my sentiment exactly. Now, I looked at this, the shortage of law enforcement. It's anybody's guess, but oh, good grief, it's no wonder. You want to go home at night, and I know that when I get posts from my niece and somebody has, a life has been lost, it's devastating. And it's felt within the community. It's felt not just the police community, but it's felt among citizens as well. And we have to, I know you hear that so much, that, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. I don't know that we would have any better offer, except that we respect the men and women who serve, that, again, it goes back to culture, compassion, inclusiveness. When we've got people from our city involved in what we're doing, again, the Senate Office of the Budget. This would be the West Haven Office of the Budget. Okay, when they can see that we've got to have 20 officers and we need to provide this training, we've got to provide equipment, and this is the reason why they're either going to say, oh, well, we don't need this, or oh, yeah, I get that. I think there's going to be more, I get that, than, oh, we can't do this. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that this is a critical issue, and I know it's one that we're going to be facing probably sooner than later. I'm not afraid of that, and I think we need to get our public involved and get everybody as much as we can on board with training, with equipment, with compassion and community and just inclusiveness. We've got it, and as we are being responsible with our development, we could make this happen.
Okay, so we're going to follow up on that. You guys both discussed how there is a difference in community perception of the police force. How would you go about improving that?
I think having the officers or deputies out in the community more is a good thing. I think having the interaction with the public on a positive note is a good thing. Most people run into the law when they've done something wrong. If you can run into the law because you're doing something right and good, I think that is probably the most effective way to bring up the perception of law enforcement officers. I see our deputies in our schools, and every time I drive by and see one of the vehicles outside, I just think that's wonderful. They're in the school, interacting with the students, so those students can become friends of theirs. I think we need to get away from the fear of law enforcement. We need to get away from being afraid of what might happen, and recognizing that they're people, putting our employees or our contracted employees in a position where they can interact with our public is so, so important. I saw several of them at West Haven Days just recently. What a great thing to get out in the community and just participate. Just wander around the car show or hang out at the rodeo and see what's going on in the communities that you serve. That's a wonderful way to do that. And I think every little bit helps to bring a more positive perception of law enforcement, and absolute support from elected officials. We have to support our law enforcement men and women. If we don't, we can't expect the public to do that. We have to stand behind them just like we would any other employee. We have to stand up for them and let them know that we will have their back. Because if we don't, there's no way we can expect our residents to do that.
I love the concept of resource officers in the schools. I don't know if it's possible to get a couple more in there, but things can get a little dicey with actually it even goes down to the elementary levels now. And my greatest education happened in a nursery classroom where I was assisting a teacher up at Weaver High School. They have a nursery class with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. I think I was in the 4-year-old class. And these two little guys were playing cops and robbers, and they were running around with something they were shooting at each other. And I remember my boys doing that, and I remember my father talked about, I even saw pictures of him. He was a policeman when he was 5, I think. So, any rate, but this little kid said, oh, you're a bad guy, I'm going to shoot you. And it dawned on me, wait a minute, that's not the only thing police do. They protect us from people who want to hurt us. Hello? And that little fella stopped and looked at me, and the teacher stopped in her tracks and said, I never thought of that. You are protectors. And we just got to get that point out. And if we're elected into these offices, you better hold our feet to the fire and make sure we're doing that. If we're not, from the top all the way to the councils, fire them. Fire us. Make it happen. Because this is just too important to let go. And how I'm combating it, I love it, and that's how I'm combating it, is I'm grassroots, boots on the ground with the kids. Hey, do you know that these guys protect us from people who want to hurt us? That's what they do. That's why they're here. Our first responders protect us from germs and broken bones, etc., etc. But they won't come in until everybody is safe.
What position will you be taking on the discussion of developing a new police department or continuing to contract with the Weber County Sheriff's Office?
Not having, again, all the information, ladies and gentlemen, you are here representing the Weber County Sheriff's Office. I've done some study. I pulled some information off the internet, which is always true, of course, but most importantly, I've talked with my family, I've talked with my friends. My father is on the other side of heaven, so he's in heaven now, and I can't talk to him, but I know how he felt. As far as the police department is concerned, I did some counting, and of course the numbers don't even come close to what Weber County Sheriff's Office. It pretty much boiled down to response time. I don't know how to address that. I'm not in the field. You have to go to the most important places first. We get that. And maybe there's another way to resolve this. Maybe there is I'm open. I am open for information and dialogue, because I think there's a way we can resolve this to the, at least to help residents feel like when they call, they're going to get a response, because you can't always come. We get it. I get it. If there is a child issue going on, or I'm going to say child because that's kind of important to all of us, you're going to be there. And that's happened to me in Harrisville. That's where the officers were. They couldn't come where I called, but they were over with the officers. They did call me later and explain. I really appreciated that. So that's what I would like to see, but I want information, input. Give me input, and let's make a really good decision for our community.
My position on having our own department or continuing our contract with the Sheriff's Office is very simple. First of all, the council needs to have all the information in their hands required to make the best decision for the residents. And our current study is going to give them that. If there's additional information that I can pull, or different levels of support I can pull, expertise I can pull for them through my relationships, I am 100% committed to doing that. They need to have everything in hand to make the best decision. This is the most important stance that I have on developing a new police department. If that's the direction that a council I serve with ever wants to go, I will be committed to make sure that officers who come to our police department will know that we will pay whatever it takes to make them safe. We will not cut corners. We will not be a training ground. We will not put you in a position with equipment or otherwise that would put you at harm. That makes no sense. If that's the way to get to our own police department, that's a no-go for me. I would encourage the council to step back and say, is this really what we want to do? That would be my biggest push if we make a switch in West Haven. Make sure those people know that we will support them in any way and in any amount that they need to stay safe.
Over the past year, we've seen issues of police brutality all across the country. How will you develop a culture of accountability with your police officers to prevent or correct these issues?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is training. And I think the deputies and officers who are watching this would understand that. I'm not a police officer, but I certainly recognize that they are in positions where emotions are high, where they have to act almost without thinking, and that comes with training. That comes with putting them in situations where they have to act without thinking, where they have to think quick on their feet, where they have to feel that anxiety and that tremendous amount of pressure, am I making the right decision? And training goes a long way. I believe that's why there's been so much state mandated training. I believe it's speaking to the level of police brutality that we see. They recognize that these law enforcement officials need to be well trained if we expect them to act in the best way that they can under such dire and extreme and stressful circumstances.
Well, I'm going to take the position that I would have heard from my father. And that would be, you can have a well-trained officer, but if you've got a really rude person who's not going to be compliant, it's just going to raise the bar so much more. So I don't know what the definition of police brutality is. But I remember hearing my father say, you know what? You should see what the people are doing. You don't see that so much on the web camera, do you? You see what the officer is doing, and they're getting all the pressure, all the blame, pretty much all the time. I want this culture to start into the schools. I want our children to not be afraid of officers. I want you to know that you can go to the police officer when you're lost in Washington, D.C., and you've got 5 kids that you're on a field trip with and say, I am lost, I don't know how to get back to the bus. And they put you in their squad car and they take you over there with a smile. Now that's the kind of policing I think we want. And that's what I want my children to know. That's what I've taught my children. And that's what I am, is somebody who wants to be sure that we're just not, it's not just the officer's fault. There's more involved. People and the citizens. We got to behave better. We just have to do better.
Okay, we will now be moving on to our community question period. If anybody has any questions, then you can come right up to the desk and you can ask them yourself. Come on, I promise it's so much fun.
Oh yeah.
I'll even bring it to you.
Okay, one of the earlier questions was they asked about CERT training. How prepared is Weber County for a major incident? How prepared, should I say, is West Haven prepared for a major incident? We had a shake a year and a half ago. We had a house foundation shift, but we didn't lose resources. We didn't lose our infrastructure. How prepared are we when those infrastructures go down? We know the city is purchasing a generator. Gee, why does the city need a generator? Simple for those that don't know. It is to pump sewage after 2 days of a power outage. How will we for supplies?
When we know there will be no federal help for at least 7 to 10 days, how prepared is our city?
I don't know, but I'll be finding out in the first 90 days.
I'm glad that was brought back up again, Pat, because you mentioned that, and I wrote a note and then I didn't see it. In the past in West Haven City, one of our council members, as a volunteer effort, as an assignment, but that person went above and beyond the assignment, spent a lot of volunteer hours becoming certified in emergency management. And once she was off the council, I asked the council to please leave in the budget funding for a part-time emergency manager. And they agreed to do that. And they agreed to do it only on a part-time basis until the remainder of that budget year was complete. In the sense that that person would train then a new council member. So I assigned a new council member to do that. Well, after the pandemic and after the earthquake, that new council member said, hands up, I cannot do this. This person is so well trained from her experience over 12 years that that's the expertise we need. So we hired that person. The new council member took it upon herself to find some grant money so that we would be able to subsidize the hiring of a part-time person. We hired that person. I will say that I was disappointed that that position was eliminated from our budget this year because that emergency manager ran our CERT program. Excuse me. It's a very small cost, especially with the grant subsidy. It was a very small cost, and I was disappointed to see that go. I would love to see it start up again. Every budget has a new cycle, and as I said before, councils can change every 2 years. We know that the council will change by 2 people in the coming year. I would love to see a new council put that line item back in the budget and prepare for emergencies. We don't know when they come. One of the statements that was made when that was cut from the budget is 2020 was a unique year, and I just don't see any emergencies coming anytime soon. That's not the way that we view emergency management.
Would anybody else like to ask a question? Anything?
My question is, okay, have you ever used your position, such as the relationships you say you've developed throughout the police department and such, in a manner that could be construed as misuse? And if so, why would you feel that was appropriate?
I don't know if that one's for Pat at all, but I know it's for me. Is there any time that my power has been misused? The 3 instances I can think of all involve my children when they receive speeding tickets. Now it makes it sound like we're a speeding family. They asked me how to fight that, and I said, I don't know. Go figure it out on your own. I know that it's been done, but I don't know. And they went to court, all 3 of them. 2 were successful, 1 was not. Hats off to them, either way, I don't care. But I was asked by family members how to do something. They didn't ask me to get them off the hook, but they did ask me what the process was. I did have one other time when a council member it's been several years, probably been 4 years, 5 years ago, had someone leave his house and get a speeding ticket. And that council member called me and said, can you give a pardon for this? And I was like, I don't even know that I can, and I don't have a desire to. I wanted to give them the correct answer, so I asked her attorney if I had that authority so that I could then tell the council member, I do have that authority, but I'm not going to. But I found out that I don't have that authority. But it was interesting that authority was perceived. So if you can ask my kids how supportive I am of trying to circumvent the rules of the law. I'm not very supportive. Did you want to respond to that?
I don't know. I'm hoping that speeding tickets are not part of, your resume forever, are they? Is there a limitation?
No, I have a clean record.
Oh, good. Okay, because I got one out here. That was the only one I ever got was in Utah. And I was going too fast. I did, and I went to Dum-Dum School. So I didn't try to get out of it. I faced it and went to school and got it off my record, and I learned several things. I was really glad to have gone to that school. So I don't think that's part of anything. I believe it's called quid pro quo. Is that accurate? That's not in the on the agenda anywhere. So please don't ever ask me to do that, because I'm just going to look at you really dumb. You're asking the wrong person.
Anybody else? Keep them coming.
So my name's Rebecca. I'm from Weaver State University, from our debate team. One of the most important things that we've learned on the debate team is the concept of positionality, which means that we actively look at ourselves and we recognize that the reason why we see the world the way that we do has a lot to do with where we come from and who we are and our personal life experiences. Now, along those same lines, I personally have never had a negative experience with a police officer, like we discussed at the beginning of this topic. How, in a mayoral position, do you plan on, because you represent the entire community, how do you plan on supporting those within the police force while also recognizing and validating the concerns of those who do not have a positive experience with police?
her to go first. Okay. You're first.
Oh, me? Well, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to find out why you had a negative response, or what happened, first of all, and your perception of that. What happened? And if it needs to go further, we can find the officer. This is my dad. I mean, this is, oh golly, I learned this from him. He said you talk about it, and he was not a talker. He was more of a doer. Shut your mouth and be quiet. Sit down. That was Dad. But as we have learned, you have got to come to grips with what has happened. Now, not everybody's going to have a positive experience. What happened? Not why, what? And when we keep asking these why questions, we're not going to get any answers. But when we can start asking what, how did this happen? Where was it? What was going on before when it happened? You know, you can usually find out what the reason that person is unhappy with. Maybe the officer was wrong, but maybe the officer wasn't wrong and what the person did was wrong. Again, I think we go back to culture, but it's got to come from compassion. It's got to come from the attitude that, wait a minute, everybody has a perception and a perspective. Yours is just as valuable as anybody in this room, including the people sitting at this table. So thank you for asking that question, because you're absolutely right on point. We need to find out what caused the problem to begin with, and then work to resolve it. That seems like a just natural thing to me.
I want to respond in a little bit more general term. I think positionality is so important in public leadership. My experience is vastly different from those who I serve in a lot of ways, and it's changing more and more. As we get more people in West Haven, we get more diversity and more experiences that I have not personally had. We have to see that point of view. We just simply have to put ourselves in the shoes of the other people, although we have never worn those shoes ourselves, and we have to understand, why are they having negative interactions with law enforcement? Most likely it's because they're doing something wrong. In more cases than not, they're doing something wrong. They've either been taught that by their parents or their families. They've been taught that by their culture, by their neighborhood, by where they grew up. Something's causing that interaction. Something's causing those run-ins with law enforcement to repeatedly happen. And while supporting police officers, I think to get to the root of a problem, you have to put yourself in the shoes of those people who maybe have not had the chances you've had. Because I'm certainly in a position where I could easily turn my head and say, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand why these people do what they do. I don't understand why they're so obstinate. I don't understand why they are so entitled. I don't understand why they are so this or that. I could say that all day long. As a mayor, I need to try to understand. That's my job. Understand why my community is doing what they're doing. And that goes a long way in putting yourself in a position to understand why someone's having negative experiences with law enforcement.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Last call.
Jasmine, are there any online? Are there any online?
Oh, it went down.
The online crash.
Just checking.
Oops.
Last call before they make close. There we go. See if I ask enough, you guys will do it.
All right, my question is for both of you. How do you guys feel about veterans in the community, and do you feel like they've earned the right to be heard?
For all of the words. How do I feel about what?
About them
Veterans.
being hurt.
Veterans?
In the community
Oh.
and their right to be heard.
Oh. Okay. I am also the wife of a veteran. I'm the mother of 2 veterans. And I am, aside from bleeding police blue, I also bleed khaki, but Air Force khaki. So I want to make that very clear. Veterans are right up there, guys and gals. You stood between us and somebody's bullet, and I'm not going to forget that. And I'm going to teach it around me. This is so close to home. I'm not supposed to cry. I said I wasn't going to be emotional. But you know what? When our veterans do for us as a community, we better stand and give them some recognition, and we better be more responsive when the flag walks by or is carried by. We need to be better citizens, and I think that encourages us to be better citizens. My father was one of the greatest generation, so was my father-in-law. I come from a family that is just totally service, boots on the ground, right in the fray. And that's where my uncles have been. My grandfather was not part of the group that went to war, but he was at DuPont, and he said, oh my goodness, I remember him telling my mother, as just a little girl, oh, you should see the fabric they're making. It was nylon. They were starting to come up with nylon. He was so proud of the work he did to help our troops. And I think veterans deserve the highest respect as any law enforcement officer.
When I think of veterans, I certainly think of those in the military who have served our country, and I have a great deal of respect for them, and there are members of my family who are veterans. They deserve the respect from the whole community. First responders are also in that category. When you retire from either a firefighter or a law enforcement position, you're considered a veteran to those organizations. And I think the biggest thing that we are missing as a society regarding veterans, both in the military and in first responders, is the continuance of their life and their needs after they're done serving us. I serve on the Weaver Fire District Board of Directors, and our vice chair on that board last year was trying to get legislation to help first responders get the psychological and emotional help they need after they retire. We can't expect these individuals to perform at a high level of service for the safety of our communities and see the things they see and experience the things they experience, and then send them on their way to live their lives. Those things stay in their minds for the rest of their lives. And as a fire district board, we advocated for that legislation. I think attending to those emotional scars that they carry is one of the most important things that we can do for our veterans in our community, and we cannot let that slip by. We cannot say thank you very much and send them on their way and expect them to live their lives with some of the scars that they carry. We have to support them emotionally and give them the help that they need until they come to a point where they don't need it anymore. That's our responsibility as a community.
Well stated.
This would be more toward Mayor Bolos. Would you
Be willing to go to the council and request that some reserve cemetery plots be made available for veterans who have no cemetery plots? The closest VA cemetery in this state is down at Camp Douglas. But we have veterans dying daily in this area and over at the VA home in Harrisville. But would you be willing to sponsor to the council to maybe reserve a half dozen spots in city cemetery here for those who have nothing?
I think that's a great idea. We've got a big cemetery that was built not too long ago, and even though it seems like big business, there are a lot of spots left. But I think that's a fantastic idea to reserve spots for veterans. Now, I will say this: that we've had recent discussions about the cemetery and the costs of the cemetery, well, the cost of purchasing a plot, and how we're going to, as it fills up further, how we're going to try to make sure that our residents have preference. So when you talk about veterans, I think that's a conversation that the council could delve into. Are we talking about a reservation of plots for veterans in any community, veterans in our community, or veterans at all? But that's a great question, and I would absolutely be happy to take that to the council. I saw a smile on the face of one of our council members, so it would be a great conversation to have. Did you want to respond?
Sure.
I would certainly like to support that. And as Mayor Bolos mentioned earlier, our veterans include our first responders. So I would say anyone that is in need of space. We might, families like to stay together. So you might have to do like Arlington did and make it a plot for husband and wife. You're allowed to do that in Arlington, and I think maybe a third person. I don't recall, it's been a while since we've actually been involved in Arlington, but we do have family there. And there are cases where we have, aren't there 3 plots in Arlington? Not any longer, just the 2. Just 2 are allowed now. And sometimes you're not even allowed to go into the ground. You have to go into one of the mausoleums. We may end up doing that in West Haven too, but anyone that serves in this community, in my opinion, who is, oh my goodness, has served this community and is in need of help, how could we turn our backs on them? Or even once, it should be given. It should be part of the benefits if that's what people want to make it. But absolutely any of our men and women who wear a uniform and who stand between us and harm deserve a spot in West Haven.
Would anybody else like to ask a question?
Uh-oh, there's your science teacher.
Is it? No, he left.
Yeah, I'd like to know where the other candidate is.
Other candidate is not in attendance. I'm not sure.
Wasn't there supposed to be a thing between the people that are running? The other candidate is running. He's not here?
Yes.
He must not care.
I'm Sally Butters, and yes, I think that that's an unfair statement to say that somebody that couldn't come because of a scheduling conflict doesn't care. But there will be another opportunity in which you will be able to listen to all 3 candidates, and that's coming up on Thursday, July the 22nd. By all of you to come to the city chambers, and we'll have another opportunity.
Okay, would anybody else like to ask a question? Great, we will move on to the 2-minute closing statement, and we will start off with Sharon.
Thank you so much for those who have attended. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate your concern. I appreciate your willingness to come and learn about the candidates you'll be voting for in this next election. Anytime we can get citizens engaged is a great time. It's hard to do. I feel like in my years of public service, I've seen the willingness for residents to engage drop. And it's unfortunate because we need you to understand us and we need to understand you. So thank you for being here. I want to thank from the bottom of my heart the Fraternal Order of Police for doing this. I know that most of these questions were geared toward law enforcement, and it's because it's your jobs and your livelihood. And in the time I've spent becoming closer to first responders, their agencies, their officials, their employees, I have my respect for all of them has increased exponentially. I recognize more and more every day what they do for me and what they do for our community, and I'm so appreciative of that. And so that's why I appreciate this opportunity so that we can express our views on issues that affect you and your livelihood and your families. I appreciate the support of my family, always being there for me and supporting me in the things that I do. We live in a great community. West Haven is my home. After having not grown up here, I certainly feel like this is the place I would call home. I'm grateful that my children have been able to grow up here and be provided with this community of you all who have made it a great place. So thank you.
Thank you to our host of the Fraternal Order of Police, and what do I call you, Officer Fisher, Mr. Fisher? Is that your last name, Fisher?
Officer Fisher.
Officer Fisher. I don't care, because I've got your smile now. I may not remember your name when I see you, but I will remember your smiles. I can promise you that. And especially you in the back with the laughing. I see that. I love the men and women who serve in uniform, whether they are the the gentlemen that came, the paramedics who came with the big fire truck too, and at 6 in the morning and helped me off the cliff with my husband and his diabetes, because that was not in my head. And that was a very simple thing, but I know they've been involved in some really hairy stuff. And I am so grateful for your willingness to serve, and you've got family members that are sitting right there with you who are assisting you in this huge job. And anything that I could do, whether I'm a citizen or whether I'm elected as your mayor, you can count on my support, that of my family, I know, and they're always behind me. I don't blow them off. I didn't even start this without getting their okie dokie. And I am thrilled to have had this opportunity to bring back these wonderful memories with my father and growing up, and the feelings that I had toward the police and the firemen and the paramedics, and how much greater my love is for even my nieces and nephews now that have chosen this profession. And I thank you for your service, and I look forward to being your mayor.
Thank you everyone for attending. This video has been put together, will be posted. Apologize, the live feed didn't go through. The internet went down shortly after we started. So we'll get this up hopefully within an hour or two after I get this cleaned up and back to a working internet. So thank you for the candidates for participating. We do encourage you to participate, go to the other debate. No way does our debate meant to pull away from any of the others. Get the most information you can before making your vote. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Yes.